Today we're looking at Labyrinth Chronicles, an updated version of a maze-shifting board game that's been around for 40 years.
Welcome to So You Game Often, where we share quick impressions of the games we play.
Labyrinth Chronicles is published by Awaken Realms and Ravensburger. It's a light game for 2 to 4 players with an average playtime of 20 to 60 minutes per session. This version upgrades the production with things like 3D labyrinth walls, miniatures and portals. It includes the classic Race to Collect Treasures mode for PvP play and the new Chronicles campaign, which is a cooperative mode for 2 to 4 players.
At its core, it's a puzzle game where players move through a constantly shifting maze, trying to reach treasures and complete objectives. There are 4 different characters to choose from, each with their own skills which helps them feel distinct during play. Each turn you push a tile onto the board, which changes the layout of the labyrinth and opens or blocks paths for your character, as you race against other players or the loot goblins to snatch the treasure first.
In the Chronicles campaign mode, the aim is to rebuild a small village. As you play, you unlock content from the locked boxes, and each one repairs a building in the village and introduces new rules and mechanics. So the game gradually becomes more complex as the campaign progresses.
For theme, we'd rate this as strong. You're exploring a magical labyrinth, hunting for treasure, while trying to make sure the goblins don't get there first. The shifting maze mechanic really reinforces that feeling of navigating a labyrinth, and sometimes being lost in one. As you unlock content in the campaign, the rulebook itself expands, introducing new rules, abilities, and objectives as the story progresses. So the game itself evolves as you explore it, which adds to that sense of discovery.
For production, we're giving this a silver. The 3D walls, miniatures, and portals make the labyrinth look fantastic on the table. The artwork and components are clear and well produced, the iconography is easily identifiable, and the overall presentation feels like a modern update of the original game. The rulebook is easy to read, and the game itself is not particularly heavy, so it's quite accessible overall. One thing we appreciated is that the publisher proactively sent an additional main board after identifying an issue where some boards could absorb moisture and warp.
And ours did warp a little bit.
It did, yeah. We noticed some of those tiles are a little bit kinky. On the downside though, the Personal Stories expansion has a couple of limitations. It only includes 1 help card and 1 usable character sheet, which does feel a little bit restrictive for something designed to be replayed. While the iconography was clear, it relies heavily on colour differentiation. The symbols themselves don't change, which may be difficult for visually impaired players.
For flow and pace, we'd rate this as steady. Turns are generally quick, but players will often take a moment to think through the maze before they make a move, especially when the board is shifting and suddenly your planned path disappears. Later in the campaign, however, you'll have a few more tools at your disposal, and you'll have more complex objectives to satisfy, so that turns may slow down a little because of that. Some character skills will allow you to interrupt other players, which will help keep everyone at the table engaged, and this also helps reduce downtime. In the campaign mode, you have a labyrinth run followed by a village phase where bookkeeping occurs, but this is also where most of the progression happens because you're unlocking that new content, so it doesn't really feel like a chore.
For player interaction, it really depends on the mode you're playing. The classic mode is very much PvP, where you race against one another for the goodies, and every time somebody pushes a tile into that maze, it can completely change everyone else's plans. Most of the time, not ideal. In the Chronicles campaign, the game becomes cooperative, where players will work together to solve the puzzle and rebuild that village. So you'll find yourself planning your turns around your group's interests instead. In either case, the player interaction is quite high.
One thing we really liked is how easy the game is to learn, to teach, and to play. The campaign itself is short and progression is steady. Unlocking new content keeps things fresh and engaging, and all the unlockable content has a reset guide, so it's easy to run another campaign from scratch. However, the Personal Stories expansion feels a bit tacked on and doesn't really add depth to the characters. And this lack of character sheet provision was also a little disappointing.
Overall, Labyrinth Chronicles feels like a solid update of a classic design that's not just for kids. It keeps that clever maze mechanic while adding a campaign mode for players who want something a bit more involved with progression and varying goals. To see all unlockable content, you will have to play the campaign at least 3 times, as there are a few different buildings that you are limited to each run. So if you're looking for something light, you love puzzle games, or you just like a thematic table presence, this one's for you. It will be staying on our shelf, and if you're watching this in March 2026, the Pledge Manager is currently open on GameFound.
And that's our quick impression of Labyrinth Chronicles. Thank you for watching.
And if you're wondering, yes, we do get more.